Hey guys, Cruxel. Welcome to my guide on the grenades of CSGO. This is going to be going over the basic movement tips and knowledge that you should have when using grenades in this game that are going to help you out immensely. First up is the difference between the Molotov and the Incendiary being $200 more. That's because it's a CT weapon, of course, and those are always more expensive. Also, the Incendiary goes slightly farther when thrown, but it's very negligible. Unlike myself, the CT's Incendiary grenades pullout game is weak as fuck. As you can see, it's much slower than the Molotov here. And whether or not you have armor, they're both going to shred through you pretty quickly. It doesn't make much of a difference on the timing for either, as you can see here. I will mention that the Molotov seems to ignore armor a bit more than the Incendiary grenade. As you guys know, left click is the farthest possible throw from standing still, and there's also a right click underhand. There's also a middle click, which is actually infinitely changeable. It depends on how quickly you release one key or the other. So that's why in my tutorials for smokes, I never ever show you guys a middle click because they're so variable. As you can see here, I sped up the footage and each one of these throws is a little bit different. It really depends on how each mouse button is released. So if you release the left just before the right or vice versa, it can change the throw drastically. So never base a pop flash or smoke off of a middle click unless you want it to be super loosey-goosey. A lot of people in this game seem to have a big issue with movement in general, but it's really amplified with grenades. As you can see, when you're strafing here, if you throw, it's going to be throwing in the direction of your strafe. So if you want to throw directly where your crosshair is aiming, make sure you counter strafe, because it can fuck you over in situations like this. Running and just underhand throwing a flashbang is not going to ever go behind you unless you counter strafe backwards and immediately start walking again. I'll show this strategy in slow motion here in a second, but it's a great way to pop flash yourself into certain situations without being fully blinded. As you can see, the technique goes running forward, look up to the sky, underhand, and as you're doing that, step backwards for just a second and then continue walking forwards, and it will pop flash behind you. Make sure you're not aiming to the top of wherever you're trying to flash or smoke because it gives it a higher arc than it needs to. You can kind of aim through the object itself because the crosshair isn't accurate from where you're throwing. Make sure you don't aim too far into the object itself though, because you can fuck up your flash or smoke and be humiliated by your teammate. You'll never live that down, and you will never make it as an esport athlete. If you're moving and trying to throw a grenade, make sure that you toss it before jumping or do it before the apex of your jump, because as you can see, once you start to drop, your grenade goes directly down. Here's a great case in point from the same spot. You can see I jump and throw before the apex of the jump and then after, and it sinks immediately down and bounces. A lot of people are confused by this, but it's a great way to pop flash as well. It's a little less obvious and makes slightly less noise than just underhanding like a lazy fucking silver, as you can see here. When it comes to jumping and throwing grenades, human error is always going to be at fault. As you can see, I'm jumping and throwing here without a bind twice, and I have two drastically different results. That's because of just the small amount of human error with the timing. So every time I show you guys a smoke and say you need a jump throw bind, you probably do. As you can see, these follow the exact same trajectory back to back. Keep in mind that these are banned in certain leagues like ESEA, and different server tick rates will result in different smokes. When defusing a bomb, you can't overhand throw, but you can easily underhand throw while still defusing. So if you want to go full sparkles mode ninja, just make sure you underhand throw your nades while you're defusing, and you can toss a smoke and a flash and easily get that defuse off. A Molotov, if come in contact with a smoke, will stop the smoke directly in its path and not bounce. It will also take out the Molotov, so make sure you're not tossing random mollies into smokes because you're wasting $600 at that point, as well as tossing to the outside where you think it's safe. It probably isn't. You see a lot of pro players actually using this strategy here. Here's Freiberg attempting to stop a smoke from bouncing on the roof for CT, but he does it a little bit late. You see that in really high tiers of play at times. Also, here's a little known glitch for flashbangs. If you have your teammate stand next to the door, make sure they're turned away from it so that their gun doesn't poke out through it. But you throw a flash to their body, it'll go through the door. This is a bit of a cuck move, but Valve will make 30 weapon collections before they decide to patch this, so abuse it while you can. Also, decoys can be used to TK, so make sure you don't throw one down if people are begging you to because they're probably trolls. Thanks for watching.